You probably think friendship is a modern luxury, something that came after farming, cities, free time. But here's the thing. Studies show pair loyalty may be older than language, and natural selection quietly demanded it. So did ancient humans really have best friends? Not tribes, not families, not just hunting buddies of convenience. I mean the person you'd save first, whose name you'd whisper before you knew what a name was. Picture two stick figures sitting by a fire 30,000 years ago. Same shells around their necks, same red ochre on their skin. When one of them dies, the other places their body with matching beads, not because a chief told them to, because they wanted to. Turns out, the answer is weirder than yes. So let's define what we're asking. When I say best friend, I don't mean your cousin or your mate. I don't mean the guy you tolerate because he's good with a spear. I mean something rarer than that. A chosen, non-kin, long-term bond with one specific individual. Someone you recognize by voice in the dark. Our ancestors lived in small bands. Every person had a role. Every person was, in some sense, useful. But usefulness is not friendship. A will is useful. You don't grieve a will. Best friends are different. The question matters because it tells us something about human nature, something older than farming or writing. If best friends existed 40,000 years ago, friendship isn't a bonus feature we invented once we got bored. It's not the byproduct of Instagram or coffee shops. It's core hardware. It's part of the operating system. If you're curious about these ancient things, subscribe. I explain stuff that I find genuinely fascinating too. And it requires something surprisingly advanced. To have a best friend, you need self-awareness, a sense you exist. You need to know you're a specific person, distinct from others, and recognize another as a specific individual. You need memory across time. The ability to say, this one, not that one. This one matters more. Scientists found this kind of individual recognition shows up in very few species. Elephants, dolphins, some primates, us. In humans, it seems to have been there from the start. But first, a paradox anthropologists keep bumping into. Ancient bands were tiny, maybe 25 people, sometimes fewer. The standard story says everyone in the group cooperated equally. You share meat with everyone. You raise everyone's children. There's no room for favorites because favoritism weakens the tribe. That's the textbook version, except the bones don't agree. Skeletons across Europe, Asia and Africa keep showing something weird. Certain pairs of individuals were buried together. Not parents and children, and not always husbands and wives. Sometimes two adults of the same sex. Sometimes two people whose DNA shows no kinship at all. And they are buried holding hands, or facing each other, or wearing the same ornaments in matching arrangements. Twinned tools, twinned beads, one set of mammoth ivory carvings split down the middle, half on each body. If everyone was equal, why did some pairs get treated like they were one person split in two? The tribe equality myth breaks here. It turns out our ancestors did play favorites. They just did it quietly. And when one favorite died, the other buried them like a piece of themselves was going into the ground. So who exactly did our ancestors pick, and why? Here's the first mechanism. Hunting, not the cave painting cliché. Real hunting 40,000 years ago was a paired activity. You had a partner watching your side always. Someone whose timing had to match yours in a way a strangers couldn't. A bad partner got you killed. A great partner meant you both ate. Natural selection is quiet, but it isn't stupid at all. Over generations, humans who could form reliable one-on-one partnerships survived at higher rates. Their children survived too. Their genes carried forward. The trait we call loyalty, favoring a specific individual, got baked into us. This is called reciprocal altruism. You help me today, I help you tomorrow. Neither keeps a spreadsheet, but the bond keeps the exchange running. Over time, the exchange stops feeling like an exchange at all. It starts feeling like something else. It starts feeling like, well, friendship. Scientists found direct evidence. At a burial site called Sumgir in what's now Russia, 30,000 years old, discovered by archaeologists. Two young people laid head to head, each wearing about 10,000 ivory beads carved by hand. Estimated carving time per body, around 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours making beads for one funeral. Somebody spent 10,000 hours making beads for one specific person. That is not community obligation here. That is grief with a work ethic. That explains the men. It doesn't explain the women's graves. Because here's the thing. Look at female skeletons from the same era. You see a different signature of friendship. Not hunting tools. Grinding stones, shared, worn in the same specific patterns, meaning two women worked side by side. Day after day, year after year, at the same rhythm. Female friendship left different fingerprints, but just as deep. And then there's alloparenting, a word anthropologists love. It means raising kids who aren't biologically your own. Ancient mothers didn't raise their children alone. They couldn't. A human infant is simply far too demanding. Studies show a mother without allies simply lost her babies at much higher rates than mothers with friends. So who helped? Sometimes grandmothers, sometimes sisters, but often, crucially, a friend, a specific woman not related. Who fed your child, watched your child, cried when your child was sick, and in return, you were there. This is not niceness. This is survival infrastructure. Friendship was load-bearing. It held up the entire human species. The grandmother, an older woman past reproductive age, still helping raise grandchildren, couldn't really exist without non-kin friendships. Grandmothers needed allies too. Networks of women, bound by chosen loyalty, kept groups alive through droughts and migrations. Friendship was not a luxury for our ancestors. Friendship was oxygen. Without it, no one survived alone. And then archaeologists opened one very strange cave in northern Iraq, a place called Shanidar, hiding something impossible. Inside, they found the bones of a Neanderthal man buried under what appears to be a bed of wildflowers. Pollen analysis suggested flowers were placed on his body. That interpretation is debated now, but the burial itself isn't. This man was badly disabled, a withered arm, likely amputated, blind in one eye, healed injuries everywhere. Those injuries made hunting, gathering, even walking extremely hard. And yet somehow this man lived to old age. Someone kept him alive, not for a year, for decades. Someone brought food, someone tended his wounds carefully. In a small group, keeping a disabled adult alive that long takes distributed effort from many people. It takes people who chose over and over to include him. Turns out, it takes real friends. And here's the thing, this was Neanderthals, a different species entirely, or subspecies, depending who you ask. The impulse to care for a loved one beyond usefulness wasn't unique to us. It predated our lineage entirely. It was already there when our ancestors and theirs shared a common grandmother thousands of generations ago. Isotope data from ancient bones, the chemical fingerprints of what people ate, shows us something else surprising. Food was shared beyond genetic families. People ate meals with unrelated individuals consistently across their entire lives. That's not a one-time barbecue. That's a lifetime of shared dinners between friends thousands of years ago. And then there's the ochre. Red ochre, the earthy pigment ancient humans painted onto bodies, tools, and their dead. Ochre from specific quarries turns up hundreds of kilometers from where it was mined. It traveled, it was traded. Trade networks were the first long-distance friendships. Two people in different bands exchanging small ochre gifts across a season. Maybe they'd never meet again, but ochre traveled between them like a note passed under a school desk. Our ancestors kept in touch. Across valleys, across generations, across the boundary between what we call human and Neanderthal. If they cared about each other this much across such distances, could they also lose each other? Here's the part that gets me. Grave sites in some places show repeated visits. Someone came back many times. They added stones, they left objects. They cleared the area around the grave, sometimes over many years. That's grief. That is unmistakably grief. And grief always means, quietly, that there was love here first. The grave goods themselves, small items placed with the dead, often match items still held by someone alive. Matched pendants, split necklaces, half a tool buried with a body, the other half carried by someone still living. Imagine you're a human 30,000 years ago standing at the edge of a shallow earth pit. The person you hunted with, laughed with, cried with. No word for it yet, but the feeling was there. They're being lowered into the pit. You take your bead necklace, split it. Half goes in, half stays. Now imagine you wear that half for the rest of your life. Every time you touch it, you remember. Every time it clicks against your chest as you walk, it's them, walking right there with you. That is not a primitive act. That is not a caveman act. That is emotionally advanced behavior. One of the most emotionally advanced things a human being can do. Ancient humans were doing this. Before the wheel, before agriculture, before writing, before permanent settlements. Why? Because they had bandwidth to spare. Turns out being a super predator at the top of the food chain has a strange side effect. When you're not constantly running for your life, when you're not scraping every calorie, you have brain room. Room for memory, for story, for attachment. Predators at the top of the pyramid can afford grief. Prey animals mostly can't. Grief is a luxury tax paid only by species that have already won. And ancient humans won early. By 40,000 years ago, we were the deadliest thing on Earth. We had spare emotional bandwidth. And we spent it on each other. Which finally answers the question. Yes, ancient humans had best friends. And it wasn't a cute side effect, it was selected for. The humans who could form deep, specific one-on-one bonds outlived and outbred the ones who simply couldn't. Friendship was a second survival system, running alongside family. When kin failed you, parents died, siblings starved. When your own child was lost, your friend was the backup. That's how deep this ancient bond went. This is why we have this wiring. This is why loneliness feels like a wound instead of an inconvenience. This is why losing a close friend, even as an adult, can knock you flat for months. Your nervous system runs software written 40,000 years ago. It expects one specific person to have your back. Language itself may have evolved partly to maintain these ancient bonds. Think about it for a moment. Most of what humans actually talk about, all day, every single day, isn't information at all. It's connection, it's gossip, it's small talk, it's checking in. Studies show most human conversation is emotional grooming, not fact transfer. We are keeping each other close, one sentence at a time. The best friend is older than farming, older than cities, older than writing, older than the wheel. It might even be older than our species itself. Which means something a little uncomfortable about you today. Modern loneliness is not weakness, it's ancient biology. Modern loneliness is literally your body fighting 40,000 years of deep evolutionary wiring built into you. When you don't have a close, specific, non-family friend who truly knows you, your ancestral hardware registers an alarm. It doesn't know you have a phone. It doesn't know you have a coworker you say hi to daily. It's looking for the hunt partner, the one who splits the sacred beads with you at the burial fire. That's why loneliness is now linked to actual, measurable physical health effects. Higher cortisol, weaker immune response, Studies show it correlates with shortened lifespan in ways that would seem melodramatic if the data weren't so consistent. One last question before we go. If ancient humans had best friends, did they also have real enemies? Not rivals within the group. Chosen long-term enemies, the same way we have chosen close best friends. Turns out, the same brain wiring that lets you love one specific person forever lets you also hate one. And the archaeological evidence for those chosen, long-term ancient enemies is honestly quietly unsettling to look at. But that's a different video. If you found this one interesting, subscribe. I explain stuff that I find interesting. The Ancient Humans series has a lot more coming, and the next